And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in the state of Texas.
John, it's budget season at LAUSD, which means it's time for UTLA President Cecily Mayart Cruz to give out her demands.
We need investments in queer-affirming spaces and curriculum and culturally responsive supports for immigrant students. We need a budget that raises salaries.
There we go.
Well, I'm sure educating the children made the list at some point.
Get that money!
Or maybe not. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a very familiar voice to those of you here in Southern California and in the Bay Area, Red Eye Radio. He is also a columnist at the LA Daily News and all the other Southern California news group papers. Doug Mcintyre, welcome.
Hello, boys. How are you?
We're great. Well, thanks so much for stopping by today.
I got nothing to do. I am the most available guest you're ever going to book. I just sit here with my chin in my fist, staring at the phone, waiting for someone to call.
Well, Doug, besides being an accomplished writer and a radio host, you're also big in the world of music, where you hosted Jazz Notes for many years in Southern California. You and your lovely wife, Penny, you did a biography or a documentary, I guess I should say, on Jack Sheldon, the legendary jazz musician. You just wrote a book that focuses on Frank Sinatra and that whole world. You know the world of music backwards and forwards, and you're someone who not only has worked in that industry, but you also are just a great big fan of it and a big consumer of it. I would argue that there is no bigger city, maybe we'll throw it in, let's say, the top three, in the United States in regard to live music than Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a city that has live music in every hotel, whether it be in the lounge where you have a cover band that's playing or in the showroom where you have someone who's a bold-faced name who's playing. That city makes regular contributions to the world of live music, and it would be hard for live music to survive without a place like Las Vegas, where many of these very talented musicians have a place to perform. But the tourism to Las Vegas has just fallen off a cliff right now, where it's down 8%. And really that number is probably bigger than that, because convention tourism is up 10%, meaning the number of people who choose to go there on vacation is larger than 8%. So they're dealing with some problems there right now. And my theory is that they're having problems because they're moving away from what that city is. That city is supposed to be a place where you can go and you have access to things that you may not have access to at your home, which include live music, gluttony at the buffet. You have access to the 99-cent shrimp cocktails, the cheap hotel rooms, and you go in there and you lose your money in the casino. And that's the whole concept. And that concept hasn't been the case for quite some time. And now that there's competition, now that the Indian casinos are all around us and the cruise ships are all around us and the lottery and gambling on your phone and everything else that exists in the world, now that they don't have a monopoly, their whole system is kind of falling apart. And that's bad for everything, but it's really bad for live music.
Well, the world has changed profoundly. I mean, the device that I'm speaking on, the iPhone and smartphones, it's a two-edged sword. It's an incredible tool for productivity and entertainment and information and communication, and it has democratized the monopoly that industries have had a hold on for a century or more across the board. It's not just Las Vegas that's experiencing this. I just read a piece yesterday about how the restaurant industry, as an industry, is suffering terribly. Look at the Hollywood studios, where pieces are starting to show up calling Los Angeles the next Detroit, in that an industry that was once really what put a city on a map is fleeing. And there's really, above and beyond what may be self-inflicted wounds, it's almost inevitable, regardless of what kind of tax credits or work environment local politicians arrange. The reality is that the technology has made it possible for people to do things in other places. They don't have to go to Vegas to gamble. They don't have to be in Hollywood in order to shoot a movie or a television show or make a video game. I mean, we saw this when Peter Jackson was doing the trilogy. They moved their entire green screen animation to New Zealand. And we're seeing this happen in industry after industry after industry around the world. And we are changing. Our lifestyles are changing. That, dining out in fine dining restaurants. I remember there was a deli in the West Valley called Label's Table that had been there for years, and they went out of business. They closed shop. And I went there for the last day and talked to the owner and the owner said young people don't eat in delis. They're growing up on wraps. They're growing up on food trucks. And it's a cultural shift. And I think that's Vegas is suffering from that to a certain extent. And then, right now, certainly the tariffs have hurt, the sort of hostility towards foreigners, that the vibe that's being put out by the administration has certainly discouraged tourism in general, not just to Vegas, but to the United States in general. So you're seeing a lot of things that have impacted what's happening on the ground in Las Vegas.
I want to run some numbers by you because online gaming is certainly an industry that's one of the most fastest growing industries in the entire nation. According to Sportsbook Review, 2024 saw almost $150 billion in bets at legal sports books. In 2023, it was $121 billion. 2022, it was $93 billion. And 2021, it was $57 billion. About 3/4 of all U.S. states have some form of legalized sports wagering. And get this, the list of potential states to legalize it in the not-too-distant future includes Georgia, Minnesota, Texas, and right here in California. We got to vote on this a couple of years ago, and voters overwhelmingly voted it down, in part because of the language, the specific language in those two initiatives, where it would not only legalize sports gaming in California, but it would grant monopolies to very specific corporations, and people just thought that.
There were two ballot measures, and they, when people start, this is a tactic, as you know, to defeat ballot measures, is put a bunch of them on there, and then people say, I don't know what this is, I don't know what I'm voting for, I give up. I just vote no on both of them. So I think that's also contributed to it. But ultimately, there's going to be no way to stop this. I mean, what's to stop somebody who lives in California from going online and opening a DraftKings account or something like that? I mean, there's really no way to stop this ultimately. It's like people who try to put, restrictions on online pornography. And how do you filter it out? There's going to be a million workarounds. What people get the vices that they desire. They just do.
Well, here's what has me worried about this. When we voted on legalized marijuana in California, I have a very libertarian streak in me, as do you, as does Randy. If you want to do something that I don't like, as long as you're not bothering me, I don't care. Go ahead and knock yourself out. In fact, do it twice on Sunday. But what we learned from legalizing marijuana is that it's not a victimless crime. We now have zombies all around us, everywhere you go. And we have all new problems that didn't even really exist in any significant way before we legalized marijuana. And now the answer is not, okay, they chose to start doing drugs, and one drug led to another drug, and that led to another drug, and now they're into the hard stuff, and now their brains are scrambled, and they can't pay their bills, so they're your problem now. That's not a victimless crime at that point. That is you're ruining my community, and then you're taxing me into oblivion to pay for it too. And what worries me, and I'm someone who loves to gamble, as you know, and I like to gamble on sports, but if this initiative would be anything like what happened with the marijuana, I don't want to have to tax myself more to pay for more social services for people who can't pay their bills. And given our experience with marijuana, I'm afraid that's where we'd go.
Well, look, the state runs gambling. We've got We've known forever that the people who can least afford to play the lottery are the ones who are most likely to be buying scratcher tickets. And I remember from 45 years ago, when I still lived in New York, talking to a cab driver who was making maybe on a really good week $500 a week. This is 45 years ago. He was spending $100 a week on lottery tickets. You know, I mean, people's self-destructive impulses, should not, you don't want to be a prohibitionist, because we tried that experiment. By the way, let me back up for a second, because something needs to be stated. It never gets said. When Prohibition was instituted in 1919, drinking actually went way down, despite the urban myth of everybody's drinking bathtub gin and they're all in speakeasies. That might have been true in some cities, but for the most part, people are law-abiding. So if you make something legal that was previously illegal, you get people who will go and do it, because that prohibition is now, that restriction is now removed. So, but the hardcore people, the people who will destroy their lives with vices, I don't have any way to prove this. It's just sort of life experience. The people who have life-destroying impulses are going to find a way to destroy their lives with their vices, regardless of what we do in terms of the law enforcement. But the issue, John, also goes back to the endless requirement of more funding for government at every level keeps opening up arguments for people to legalize these things, because then they can quote unquote tax it. And at some point we have to look at, is money not one of these drugs? Because, we're running trillions and trillions of dollars of deficits, and everybody, I mean, Randy was just playing at the top of the hour there, the UTLA crying for more money. We're trillions and trillions of dollars in the hole, and nobody is ever satisfied with the amount of money that their budget is getting. And the infrastructure is crumbling, and we look at all the things that don't work, and yet we have spent. I got to say, if I could have somebody else's credit card and go to the mall or go on Amazon and order anything that I want and someone else would pay for it, I can't imagine that I would still be blubbering about the things that I want. And yet somehow that is always the problem when we're spending the taxpayers' money. We keep spending it, and it's never enough, no matter what it is. So they keep looking for new ways to get revenue. So we'll legalize gambling, we'll legalize pot, we'll legalize, prostitution or whatever it is.
Well, I'll tell you what else leads to needing more money, and that's graft. And you look at what we've found out with these homeless services organizations, whether it's LASA here or with Kimberly Ellis up in San Francisco, where these organizations have just become essentially a license to launder money. And these people move back and forth from these organizations to the government, and from the government back to these organizations. And the money is not making the problem go away. Homelessness is as bad as it's ever been, if not worse, here in California, despite the fact that we spend a ton of money on it. But the money goes to the people who work there and not to the goal of reducing homelessness.
Well, look, we still have a Bureau of Rural Electrification, and it was started in the 1920s. So, these things take on their own gravity, and then it becomes, an endless money chase. A lot of the problems, the social consequences of legalizing these things are frankly something, I've talked about this for decades, frankly. The cheapest laugh that you can get in a comedy club is to just say the word pot or talk about getting stoned, and everybody starts laughing, and it's de facto the coolest thing in the world. I mean, I hate to be one of these guys who points to, rock and roll, but you look at the whole, Grateful Dead kind of, ad agency for getting stoned that existed for now 60 years, frankly, and the country took them up on it. I mean, smoking pot is just something that people do, and all kinds of people do it across the political spectrum, across demographic groups. But and the vast majority do it the way, I was going to say you drink wine socially, but that's probably a bad analogy. 'Cause I've seen you do that. But But I mean, the vast majority of people are functional adults who that's their, Cabernet. That's what they like to do. But we're kidding ourselves if we think that there isn't a social price to be paid for this, because when you have kids that are going to school and they're high before they get to class and they smoke during a break and then they're smoking after school and they're going through, I mean, it's hard enough with hormones and boredom to get through a lot of that stuff, but to go through it in a purple haze is, and some kids smoke so much and the stuff is so much more potent. There's lots of studies that are showing that some of these school shootings are being fueled by a psychosis of kids that have marinated their brains in too much pot smoke. So none of these things are consequence-free. The question is finding the line. And, all law, whatever law you pass, is an expression of morality. And by that I mean, if you value as a society order on the roads, then you create traffic signals and stop signs and places to park and, one-way streets, et cetera, because as a society, you value order on the streets. If you dislike something, then you can tax it or you can put restrictions on its use to prohibit people from engaging in that activity. So laws express values, and values can change over time. And, from those days of reefer madness when one puff of a joint was going to be send somebody on a 3-state killing spree, this kind of over-the-top paranoia about it, we've gone in the opposite direction, where people just are openly smoking pot walking down the street. I mean, my wife and I, Penny and I were down on Melrose Avenue to see a show, and wiping like windshield wipers, our hands in front of our faces, walking through clouds of pot smoke, to get to the theater. And it's the same in New York, and it's the same in a lot of cities.
Doug Mcintyre, thank you so much for stopping by. Have a great weekend, and send Penny our love.
And Johnny and Randy, thank you for calling. It's been so lonely here. It's very lonely. I'm going to go stand in my front yard.
Get out to the Valley Inn.
I'm going to go out to my front yard and yell at some clouds.
Doug McIntyre, everyone. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube. Get one of our apps, the handy-dandy KABC app or the KSFO app. Like and share these things. Put them in your Facebook groups if you're talking about local politics. Subscribe. Give them to everyone you know. And you know what's great about a podcast? You can listen to these shows over and over. They're just as fun the first time as you heard them. You hear them a second time, they're great. They're even better if you hear them 3 times.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. And right now it's time to open up the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, the first edition involves a psycho with a real bee in his bonnet towards Teslas.
Something really strange happened in the Bay Area recently, where the heiress of a longtime San Francisco coffee company, excuse me, did I say heiress? I meant heir. It's a guy. He decided he was going to start crashing into security cars and security vehicles around Tesla plants. Why? Nobody knows.
Maybe he had too much caffeine.
For more, here's NBC in the Bay Area.
The heir of a famous Bay Area coffee family now facing felony charges. He's accused of
He's a Nepo baby criminal.
Great.
Accused of ramming cars near the Fremont Tesla plant. Our Jody Hernandez has been digging through the court documents for us and has the very latest.
It all began near Fremont's Tesla plant when investigators claim an heir to the Hills Brothers Coffee Company went on a wild road rampage right here on Page Avenue early Thursday morning. According to court
Randy,
documents,
Juan Valdez's kid never did any of that. Although I don't know if he would have the same impact running into a Tesla on a donkey.
According to court documents, 45-year-old Austin Hills, the great-grandson of the founders of the famous Hills Brothers Coffee Company, was driving his Land Rover at about 3:15 Thursday morning and began tailgating a Tesla security guard.
Whoa.
Okay, question. Were drugs involved in this?
Considering the time of day, it's possible.
Who is out on his lunch break.
Plus, since he's a coffee heir, he could probably get the really good stuff.
Yeah, well, he needs to switch to decaf.
In court documents, investigators say Hills turned off his headlights and attempted to rear-end the security guard's Tesla.
Okay, that's not normal behavior.
No, it's not.
Investigators say Hills also followed the security guard into the Tesla parking lot, attempting to ram his car. Investigators say...
So this guy's in a Land Rover following any Tesla he can near the Tesla plant in Fremont, drives into the plant, and starts trying to, with his headlights off, crash into Teslas.
Totally normal behavior.
Investigators say the security guard managed to evade him, and that's when Hills abruptly left the parking lot and began ramming another occupied car parked on Page Avenue.
Wow. He hit that many cars. I wonder why he's not doing morning somewhere in Los Angeles.
I was about to say, this sure sounds like Ambien.
We've learned the woman in that car was also a Tesla employee on her lunch break.
Maybe this guy's got a bone to pick with Elon, but going after the employees that work at the plant isn't really the place to do it. I don't know what's going on here, but he's crashing all over the place. They call it pinballing.
No, what he's going to do is he's going to get all of us to have our auto insurance rates go up.
When police arrived, they say Hills took off onto 680, again shut off his lights, and began driving erratically, leading officers to end the chase. Hill was ultimately arrested later that morning in Napa. Police say
He made it pretty far.
Yeah, no kidding. To a different county.
Police say they found a variety of items in his car, including multiple cell phones, laptops, a metal pressure cooker, a gas mask, a drone.
Okay, this guy was planning something.
Yeah. Was he in downtown LA over the weekend?
The pressure cooker wasn't for quick cooking some dried beans. The pressure cooker was to make a bomb.
Oh, of course. This guy's not watching Yan Can cook. This guy's looking to create mischief.
A metal pressure cooker, a gas mask, a drone, extended shell casings, gas cans, and alcohol.
It sounds like he's ready for the end times.
By the way, this is a perfect commercial for how much room is in the Land Rover, because all this stuff was in his car.
Police say they found a variety of items in his car, including multiple cell phones, laptops, a metal pressure cooker, a gas mask, a drone, extended shell casings, gas cans, and alcohol.
How come not 4 or 5 passports and some cash and things like that?
Once again, Hill's family has a long legacy in the Bay Area. His great-grandfather co-founded the famous Hills Brothers Coffee Company that opened in San Francisco in 1898.
And 4 generations later, terrorist.
You see, this is what happens with generational wealth. If you don't have to work for a living because your great-granddad knew how to brew a cup of joe and sell it, you end up doing this sort of thing.
Investigators are still trying to determine a motive for the strange and scary attack, but court documents show Hills told police the security guard was the one driving erratically and that he had no memory of going to Fremont, ramming any cars, or being pursued by police.
Okay, so odds are he was on drugs.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't turn off my lights and start ramming cars at a Tesla plant.
That wasn't me. That was someone who looks like me.
Blaming stress for his lack of memory.
No.
Yeah, what? He's going to say, what, that was the Folgers boy?
The stress of his Nepo baby life led him into a fugue state where he went on a road rage rampage.
Yeah, you're not getting any sympathy out of me, buddy.
Blaming stress for his lack of memory. He's now been charged with assault with a deadly weapon and felony evading an officer. He also has numerous prior convictions, including one for illegal firearms activity in 2019.
Then why is he out?
It sounds like he's the Hunter Biden of the Hills Brothers family.
Hills pled not guilty to the charges in court on Monday. His preliminary hearing is set for later this month. But right now, the Hills brothers' heir is in the Santa Rita jail on a $75,000 bail while investigating.
Well, that's not enough. He's loaded.
He is going to be able to afford a very expensive defense attorney, and he is going to get off with a slap on the wrist.
While investigators try to sort out the road rampage. In Fremont, I'm Jody Hernandez, NBC Bay Area News.
Now, if he truly says he has no memory of this entire incident of going to Fremont, going to the Tesla plant, chasing after security guards, trying to crash into them with your lights off, leaving the parking lot, crashing into another car, and then leading the cops on a high-speed chase that took you all the way to Napa, I want to know what kind of drugs he was on.
My guess is everything on the periodic table. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, and right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy,
Questions?
And Randy, this would involve a heist.
This might be the largest jewelry heist of all time, and charges were finally filed after a Brinks truck got held up in Lebec. Lebec never makes the news.
Wasn't that the last name of Carla's husband on Cheers?
For more, here's KTLA.
Several people have been arrested in what authorities say is the largest jewelry heist in U.S. history. KTLA's Omar Lewis live now in Westwood with the details. Omar, good morning.
You know, you run the same risks no matter what you're trying to steal, but the people robbing the 7-Elevens really have set their sights low. You go after these jewelry stores, or what these people did, which was robbing a Brinks truck full of jewelry, at least you get a huge payday. I'm not saying it's good, but I do not understand why you're robbing the 7-Eleven for cigarettes when you could be robbing the diamonds.
Well, what's the saying? Don't risk stealing anything that you can't retire off of.
Good morning, Jessica. We know that this group of 7 suspects is accused of pulling off a meticulously planned heist that totaled about $100 million worth of stolen jewelry.
That was all in one truck?
Yeah, I don't know if I would do that if I was the delivery company.
2 of the suspects faced a federal court judge here yesterday. We can tell you prosecutors say this group followed a Brinks truck for about 300 miles before striking at a Grapevine truck stop. Now, if convicted, this group of 7 suspects could spend decades behind bars.
So they see a Brinks truck loading up stuff from a jewelry store, and they follow it up the 5 freeway till they get to the middle of nowhere, and then they rob it.
Okay, I'm not going to blame the victim, but you don't think you'd notice the same car being behind you across the state?
We had a lock on here.
You had a lock on here, yep.
And it's gone. So I don't even know where the lock is. We kind of looked around for it, but there's nothing to be found.
Okay.
This is body cam footage from police immediately after that theft. According to federal prosecutors, it all began in July of 2022. 7 men allegedly began tailing a Brinks semi-truck, leaving an international jewelry show in San Mateo. That truck was carrying 73 bags of gold, diamonds, rubies, and watches.
Whoa.
This sounds like something you'd see on a pirate ship.
Can I get an assist here, Ed Lascos?
That truck was carrying 73 bags of gold, diamonds, rubies, and watches.
Thanks, Ed.
Diamonds.
In the early hours of July 11th, it stopped at a Flying J truck stop in Lebec while one guard
should have stopped at Love's.
I think they would have gotten robbed there, too.
While one guard was asleep and the driver was eating at the truck stop, authorities say that's when the suspects made their move, cutting the lock and stealing 24 bags of merchandise valued.
Wait, so they're stopped at a truck stop. One guy's sleeping inside the truck. The other guy's eating a gas station burrito, and they don't even have to hold up anybody. They just break the lock on the back of the Brinks truck and steal $100 million.
I'll tell you, one of the things that we have learned over the years doing these crime blotter stories is that locks and safes mean nothing. If you have a motivated burglar, they're going to get into that lock. They're going to get into that safe.
Valued at up to $100 million.
It's a staggering amount of gold, diamonds, and luxury watches.
Can I get another assist, Ed?
It's a staggering amount of gold, diamonds, and luxury watches.
Thanks, Ed.
How do you even buy insurance for something like that? $100 million in one truck that's being guarded by one guy that's asleep, another guy eating a burrito, and a bike lock?
Well, I guess the standards may have gone down for who's actually working at Brinks, but this is what we've seen in all these other jewelry heists. What have we found out recently, Johnny? A lot of jewelers are not insured because the insurance is too expensive.
Well, insurance is all about risk. If you were an insurance company, would you take this risk?
The sheer volume of these large Foot Lockers would fill more than a cargo van.
Considering how much value is in here, who comes up with the idea to put all of this in one truck?
And put two guys in there where one can be sleeping at any moment? It's not like they were driving from Los Angeles to New York. They're going from one part of California to another. You can't stay awake that entire shift?
I just can't understand how they could get away with so much merchandise.
Sorry if you're going to be in it for a second.
The indictment now names all 7 suspects, including Carlos Mestanza of Pasadena, Jaziel Padilla, already serving time in Arizona, and Victor Hugo.
Wait, that guy went on to do other crimes after he scored $100 million?
I guess he's never heard the phrase, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
And Victor Hugo Valencia of Rampart Village. Prosecutors say they...
It's just great how so many of these are LA County.
Of course.
And Victor Hugo Valencia of Rampart Village. Prosecutors say they used burner phones, false names, and carefully timed getaways to avoid being captured. In the months before the heist,
being captured, they were at a gas station. They popped up in the back. They loaded the thing before anyone could even say anything.
What are the penalties for stealing that amount of goods? That, in theory, should be prison for the rest of your life, correct?
I think they call that grand larceny.
Yeah, there's got to be a whole new category for stealing that much.
To avoid being captured. In the months before the heist, this same crew allegedly hit other cargo shipments, stealing Samsung electronics and Apple.
I guarantee, because you think about the timeline of this, we're talking 2022. Johnny, these were the guys hitting Union Pacific.
Oh, I'm sure. And at no point did these people get caught until recently?
Stealing Samsung electronics and Apple AirTags across San Bernardino County. Some stolen watches and cash from the July 2022 case were recovered just this week, but much of the jewelry is still missing. The victim...
You're not getting it back. It's in another country.
You will never, ever, ever see any of that again.
But much of the jewelry is still missing. The victims, 14 jewelers in total, mostly from L.A., telling the L.A. Times the losses were devastated. Some even left the business. All 7 men now face federal charges, including theft from an interstate shipment and conspiracy to commit robbery. If convicted, several of these suspects could face up to 20 years in federal prison. The FBI says more search warrants could be on the way.
I think it's 20 years per robbery charge. I don't know how many charges there's going to be.
But typically what happens is they serve it concurrently, don't they?
Yes. So 20 years for $100 million, and you know they've got that bank account in the Caymans ready to go.
Oh, it's totally worth it. If you're some loser from LA County and you have no useful skills other than to be a criminal, and you can get away with stealing $100 million and you get 20 years with the First Step Act and all of the other programs that they have established to get out of prison early, they'll get out long before the 20-year mark is hit, and then they'll have $100 million to spend. Totally worth it.
Yeah, there's a topic for a slow day. Would you take 20 years in prison if you got $100 million when you got out?
Your grandkids would hope so.